Hi there, welcome back to the Noah Presgrove case. Today I've got a very important focused video once again, which involves my opinion, something people don't always get to hear often within this case especially. But I thought I'd give some time to share my thoughts on the matter after all the coverage that I have done, after all the discussions and points of views that I've covered, listened to, look at. And whilst on the sidelines some people have whinged and whined and have had a go at me even though it wasn't coming from my mouth and there's a misunderstanding like what we've seen in recent time, it is what it is. But what you're getting today is from the horse's mouth, and it just so happens that I can actually do a horse sound, which is levels above other people. There is a viewer and witness on my channel known as Classy who has confirmed that I do a decent horse impression. So we've seen the horse's mouth from other perspectives within the case, those inside, those outside in the community. I've looked at it. I just want to give my thoughts to do the theme of staged or not, the highway situation, the scene where the body of Noah was found. Is it normal for that to happen? Is that where everything happened to him, foul play or not? Or did it occur elsewhere? And maybe for most people, they may be in agreement with a certain idea, but I just want to share mine today and just use a bit of reasoning and common sense. If you are interested in previous videos of mine, well, top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is, you'll be able to find the previous videos, including last night, which was very interesting. And for anyone watching, be sure to check the comment section out of last night as well. Certain comments, But here's where it is. Now, where do we start exactly? The scene itself, Noah's body on the side of the highway. Based off the condition he was in and the injuries sustained, I think it's quite obvious that it does look pretty brutal. Overkill. Whether that's done with intent or not, it appears as overkill. You look at a body, you look at injuries, the level of gore, the aspect behind that, pretty brutal. You know, there are other situations in life where it could be intentional, where a person purposely punches someone in the face and it's that powerful that it kills the individual. How gory is that? Not much at all, but what happens inside internally. Other occasions where a person could be just shoved or pushed, they trip back and bang their head on the back of the head on a rock. And okay, there might be a bit of bleeding on the outside, but more so on the inside, but still nowhere near as gruesome or gory as the Noah Presgrove situation. You look at Riley Strain, very mysterious, right? How, okay, ended up in the water, but there was no water in his lungs, so he didn't drown, but he died on like ground level and then somehow ended up in the water. Weird things going on, all kinds of mysteries, twists and turns. But with Noah Presgrove, it's the mystery of how did he end up on the highway? Why was he found there? But do the injuries, as overkill and brutal as they are, do they match why he would be found there on the side of a highway? Well, the original points of, oh, maybe hit and run, maybe this and that, but then the police ruling it out and some medical experts or just experts in other fields ruling out as well. Maybe in some areas people have ruled it out as a beating furthermore, but then it's like, well, what else could it be? I mean, if the police have ruled it out, right, it's a hit and run, but there are those within the case or family members of those within the case who are believing it's a hit and run. What's going on there? It seems a bit of a disconnect with reality, a bit delusional, or just trying so hard to convince themselves or others that it could well be that and that the police got it wrong. But why would you want to do that? Because maybe the direction it could be pointing in could compromise yourself or someone you know, the position. So by trying to direct it back, pull it away and send it elsewhere, it kind of reduces the heat level. People will reduce heat levels on themselves or on others if it means biding some time or for definite, it can happen. Levels of desperation, even it might come across as a bit delusional, a bit silly, maybe a bit too obvious. People will grasp, people will do what they can, when they can, if it helps them or someone that they know. I get that. Does that apply directly here? You can interpret it that way. But to refer back to the scene and location, there would have been times in the past and in other countries where a person has been found on the side of a highway or in the ditch near to a road, whether that be in an urban or rural area. Sometimes maybe a hit and run, but obviously it depends on the injuries. Other times could be possible serial killer situation. Am I saying about that what applies in Noah Presgrove case? No. But the act of killing someone, whether it's be on the spot or planned out for some time, disposed of at the scene, killed elsewhere before, maybe, or outright killed on the spot. You know, like with the hitchhiker situations and serial killers, because there's so many serial killers over history, different ones, different types, targets, methods, aims, amounts, length of time going on for. Some caught, others may never have been and took it to their grave. But the act of coming across a dead body on the highway is shocking, nevertheless. Upon looking at the injuries sustained and the overkill and the brutality, even more concerning and worrying. And when it's more focused up top, up here, and these injuries could be caused by blunt force, a blunt forced item, object, which may not cause all the typical injuries as you'd think as what like a knife would do, which is a smaller surface area. It causes a lot more damage internally. And you think of a hard object making contact with a hard object like bone, one's going to break first. And often it can be the bone, right? And I always like to put into perspective, those injuries sustained, right? Whether you're saying it's murder or not, are those injuries all caused in one go? You think of a person at work, in a warehouse, something could go very wrong. Massive, heavy pallet or crate could fall from above and crushes a person, instant death. All kinds of breakages and maybe some cuts, maybe some bruises. It's all instant, it's all quick, and it's mostly fatal, right? If a pallet also was to fall on your leg or arm, could be broken, but you might not be dead. You could even get a compound fracture, but you're not going to be dead. But if that whole surface area makes contact with your whole body, or at least your head, or the back of it, it's probably going to be an instant kill. But the more of your body and surface area within that radius of where it falls on you, it's going to cause more injuries, but likely all at once. If one object falls on you and it makes contact with your whole body, all of it is going to be damaged in that instant, in that second. The only exception would be if you had a heavy object that fell, like that, made contact with a person's arm or leg, crushed it, broke the bone, person incapacitated, maybe dragging the body across, and then another pallet fell down, landed on the head, finished them off. Bit of a slower death. It was like a two-part thing, a two-stage part in the death of someone. Apply that two-step method with the Noah Presgrove case. Were those injuries sustained to Noah's body, the broken neck vertebrae, broken ribs, some grazes, scrapes on the bottom area, neck area completely messed up, scalp torn off? Would all of those different types of injuries from different possible angles of impact have been caused all at once by one event, one object? I don't think so. Can I explain it to you in terms of what I'm getting at? If a person was killed via a knife, right, and they had multiple stab wounds, there's a chance that the first stab wasn't the fatal one immediate. The first stab wasn't instant. It was followed by multiple other stabs. And then eventually just that total blood loss led to the death of the individual and internal organs being damaged, depending the puncture as well, where it made contact. Hell, there are some people out there where there's been stories that they've been stabbed 147 times and they may have survived. I think I've heard some stories like that. And if they didn't survive, they survived for quite some time, up until they went to hospital, checked in, and then passed away afterwards. But going through all of that, what I'm trying to get at is, it's multiple times, multiple impacts, not all in one moment. I mean, like, if you was hit by a moving vehicle, you got that initial impact first, and then making contact with the ground after. It's like a two-stage thing. That first initial impact could be truly fatal. In terms of the Noah Presgrove situation, if he was beaten, do you think the first beating, the first blow was fatal or not? If it wasn't fatal, the first blow, you'd understand why there'd be multiple attacks after that to ensure that there is death upon that person. If you know that you've killed a person outright in one shot, one punch, and then to keep going at it, that would appear like a fit of rage, somewhat unstable. In addition, based on that outcome specifically, it would be defined as overkill. It's like, come on, you've already done the damage. You've already finished them off. They don't need any more. But a person or group keeps on doing it. It was like really passionate. I guess that kind of falls in line under what people possibly labelled as the possibility of crime of passion or something. So there's that to take into consideration. Just to draw it back to what I was originally going to say about like a knife situation, you know, with the slash wounds going across a body, the cuts, the incisions, they can be in different angles, different ways. You could get slashed downwards like that. You could get slit across the throat like this. You could get stabbed like that. It's multiple attacks, whether it be all at once or one after the other, coming from different angles. And if it's coming from different angles, it's likely that either multiple people are responsible for it, or that the one individual responsible for it is doing it multiple times. So it can't really be an accident, right? And if it was to fall in line with the Noah Presgrove case and outcome that, oh, the situation with Noah, it was some kind of accident, it wasn't exactly anticipated, do those level of injuries equal an accident when it looks to be brutal and overkill, when it could imply that there's different injuries sustained caused by different types of outcomes, but all at once or one after the other as a form of overkill, finishing one off, right? I mean, like, what's another one? I saw a video, a guy on a motorbike, I don't know what country it was in, it was elsewhere, driving down fast, fall off, slide all the way across the ground for quite some distance, and then what ends up happening? They stand up, the skin's all ripped off, red raw, you can just about see their skull, and they're looking about, shocked. Well, what about the injuries elsewhere? Didn't really notice that, but it wasn't like you had like a torn scalp here, just a particular rip here, and then a broken bone there, and a scratch specifically in this area or that area. Correct me if I'm wrong, was it more to do with the left-hand side, the scrape marks or so? It's just because, like, whether it be the act of being dumped at the highway or being attacked possibly at whatever point at the highway or before that, what position could Noah have been in? Besides the position he was dumped in, or, well, supposedly dumped or placed at on his side, but not in the fetal position as it's been worded by like Caden Pressey, but also the police guy, the Ellie Jimmy Williams. I think that's the person's full name. Was there ever a position or time where if Noah was possibly being attacked, he favoured one side, curled up in a ball on his left, on his right? So depending what position you're in, you might sustain more damage to that area because it's more exposed. You think of a UFC MMA fight where a person could be going for a guillotine or a choke. They're on your back, or you're on your back, but they're underneath you. You're going for that choke. You either tuck your head in or you move your arm about, but then it leaves another area exposed. Or if you was grappling someone and then they decided to spread the legs or so to avoid being taken down, I think it is, or if it's vice versa, you got to get lower down to the ground when you're trying to attempt to take down or so. But in the act of doing that, a counter could be hitting, kicking or kneeing a person's leg to force them into a different position. If you ground and pound and you're trying to reach the head but they're just blocking like that, how do you break through it? You start going for the stomach or the sides, which then forces the opponent on their back to move their hands away and cover the other areas up. So whilst you're covering vital areas up to try and save yourself, and that can be like an inbuilt primal evolutionary characteristic and trait within protecting one's human life by themselves, in which there are defense mechanisms within, not just psychologically, but also physically, like reflexes. If you was to fall from a height and you braced yourself, put your hands out. If you used to land a bit funny, you might brace for impact. If you're in a car or a plane, even if it's going to be a bad outcome, you'll probably still brace anyway. Maybe not everyone is built like that. Maybe some people train not to brace too much and to anticipate what's actually happening compared to what isn't going to happen but may appear as a threat. There might be levels of training and tolerance levels there, but there might be some exceptions, limitations, or psychological issues which prevent people from being able to protect themselves. Some kind of defense system not quite functioning, impaired, who knows? It differs from time to time, but to refer back to Noah Presgrove, if there was an ambush, if there was an attack, would he have put up a fight? Would he have defended himself based off his wrestling background and being somewhat successful in that? And even wanting to enlist in the military, which would be somewhat physically demanding, you think Noah would be able to manage. But it always comes down to, is it a pack of wolves or a pack of gorillas, like how we saw it worded on that weird article in the UK? Or is it more so a situation of like one-on-one? I mean, it just depends. It could even be one-on-one, but it could be an ambush. And I know kind of jumping ahead on the basis of what really caused the death of Noah Presgrove, but I want to start off first at the scene, then make sense of the injuries as to how it could happen, and if it was instant or if it was one followed by the other. If it's like a 2-step, 3-step method of this happened first, followed by that, followed by this, followed by that, it's less likely to be an accident, and it's obviously less likely to be instant. I mean, the actual killing, the actual death of Noah, whilst Jack Newton gave a time of 4 a.m, in terms of the first blow sustained to Noah, how long was it until the last blow, the last attack? Okay? Was it all done in 5 seconds? Was it done in 2 seconds? Was it done in 20 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes? When referring back to a stabbing situation, that can go on for an hour or 2. Just imagine a victim, a person lying there, helpless, getting stabbed all over the body. Fast or slow, depends what the killer has in mind if they want to really drag it out. You look at members of the cartel, may kidnap someone, or there might be a rival. Could be an innocent individual or a spy. They get kidnapped, they might get recorded, they might have that. They might get decapitated or just have it slit. But how long does that take? It could differ from person to person, their neck structure, the muscle, the gender, of course, but the actual instrument used. And unfortunately, when it comes to the cartel, at times they use a dull blade, which makes it harder to cut through and takes a lot longer, to the point where they might actually have to stab into the windpipe or just the throat itself. Then you hear that gasp of the person screaming and the air being released at the same time. Within the public domain, there is footage of that type of stuff. Public domain, okay? And as dark as it is, it puts into perspective how at times the human body and mind can be one of the most resilient things in life, but other times it can be one of the most fragile things as well. Guess it depends. As for Noah Presgrove, was he in a fragile position? Was his body fragile at the time to sustain such injuries and impact? Guess it depends how many times it takes. It's like the art, well, it's not an art, but the act more so of maybe a person purposely breaking someone's arm or leg, whether that be some kind of advanced interrogation torture tactic, or if it's like a mob village mentality, getting revenge on a thief or someone who's done much worse, inappropriate behavior towards a young individual. They might cut the person's finger off, or they might try and attempt to break a person's bone or leg. It's the one, not the one on the receiving end, but the one on the receiving end of the weapon being used, which could determine how long it takes to take someone out. If a person is physically strong, they might apply more force in their swing, in their attack. It could be more instant, it could be more fatal. A person that's as old as like that grandfather from Texas Chainsaw Massacre using a hammer and trying to hit a female on the head, you might miss. You might not hit it with enough force, but it's still bad enough to cause that person injuries, pain, and suffering. But it takes longer, okay? It's like an execution. You're gonna do it, you better do it in one shot, and you better not miss, because it could compromise you, they could turn on you, or it just makes them suffer. And it depends on the situation and the aim of the killer. They're doing it to make the other person suffer, or they're just doing it instant in a fit of rage, or that they just had enough of that person, they don't want any more to do with them, so they just eliminate them immediately. As dark as it is, there are many different ways and methods of assassination, simple killing, murder, attacks, all kinds of methods, all kinds of crimes, and there might be some crossovers and overlaps with time. How would it fit within the Noah Presgrove case? I'm talking a lot about murder, I'm talking a lot about killing and examples, but how does it translate back to Noah Presgrove? Where's my opinion on that? Well, before we go any further, my outlook on the situation with Noah, where he was found, could be considered a little bit unusual. More so unusual when the police rule out hit and run. More so unusual when some of the experts and other people from other fields give their thoughts on the matter and say, it's very odd, very unusual. If the experts, or at least if some of the experts are saying it's unusual and it's not just a simple accident, it's worth listening to and acknowledging, right? So that's one checklist for me to say, on the side of a highway, not exactly a normal thing. So it could imply more than an accident. This is just my reasoning. Just wait. The injuries is what stands out to me. It doesn't look like it was all instantaneous. It doesn't look like it was all caused at the same time, unless multiple people in a beating scenario were responsible. It's like you could have two lines on your body and they were caused at the same time, but how's that possible? Maybe there were two people stood side by side and both used a cane or a kendo stick on the person's body simultaneously, or as Americans say, simultaneously, okay? At the same time, just in different parts of the body. And it just so happened that both canes made direct contact with the person's skin surface almost or virtually at the same time. Two lines, two marks at the same time, but if your knowledge was only one item was used, you'd be thinking, how can one item cause two marks when it only covers one area? It might be a second item. So when you're applying it to the Noah Presgrove case of a possible golf club, which could have caused that tear up there, maybe, somehow, or if you're trying to say that the golf club caused the broken neck and vertebrae at the back, if you were like swung down like that and your face was face down on the ground, okay, one or the other, or maybe a crossover, is it going to cause all the other injuries exactly? Not quite. Is it going to cause all those other injuries at the same time? Not exactly, unless just so happened that because there was multiple clubs at the party house, nothing to do with the party owners or the homeowner, but more so to do with Noah, Dalen, their clubs. Handed on down, taken to a party, then gone missing, then later found, acknowledged public or to an extent, and then gone missing again. Bit odd how it keeps moving about. But you think multiple clubs at the party, that a particular club could have caused a particular injury, damage sustained. Would that particular injury have been the overkill? In terms of everybody's thoughts, because I'm not an expert here, is there any particular injury, damage sustained to Noah's body, wherever, one particular injury which would have been fatal? And did it come first or did it come later on? Thinking of the order of killing. To refer back to the order of killing, if you got an instant kill, an instant shot first, anything that follows after that is a bit unnecessary. It's as if it's overkill, fit of rage, maybe double checking to make sure that they're dead. Kind of like if ISIS did the executions, the fire shot, boom. Did they fire once? Of course not. They fire multiple times afterwards. You think of movies, video games, World War I, World War II, and you got soldiers getting mowed down by machine guns. Some are still alive and fall to the ground, pretend to be dead, may hide under dead bodies, whatever. And then the enemies come around checking and still shooting at dead bodies just in case that any are alive. And if you're hiding underneath one, that double checking to make sure that bullet could go right through and hit you. So you're not guaranteed to be safe in those situations. Sometimes people will go overkill just to reassure themselves that person that they've taken their rage out on or whatever, jealousy, and they've inflicted overkill damage fatal. They do it a few more times just to be sure with themselves. Others do it, they know what they've done, They know that the person's dead, but they just feel like doing it more, you know? You know, like talk about kicking someone when they're already down. You know, you've done what you've done what you've said, you know, you've expressed yourself, you've done whatever, legal or not, it's now time to walk away. But they still remain, they've got more to do, more to prove to themselves or just to release. That's where it gets a little bit too much and quite unnecessary. It's unnecessary in the first place, killing, but on top of that all, any further damage seems a bit too far. A level of intensity, maybe a level of passion. And what would cause that overdrive? An overdrive in maybe high levels of alcohol, because it can make people aggressive at times. It can, I don't know, like give like a bit of energy, a boost, but not always for the right reasons. Okay. So yeah, the injury damage situation makes me question. Okay. Not all the injuries caused at once, but one after the other. The length of time it would take to cause one injury after the other. The attack interval could imply one individual responsible, direct, indirect, or multiple. You think a situation like a bullying situation, a beatdown, an ambush. Simple person at school gets ambushed by a group of bullies, punched, kicked to the ground, and all five lay into that one person at the same time, all kicking and punching. Some may take their turns, but other times they all do it at once, surrounding the person. You think it in third world countries where there might be some tension, there might be conflict, there might be brawls, attacks, whatever. Are they all like, oh, let me take my first turn, pretty please, and you can follow afterwards. Everybody queue in line. Well, there might be people queuing in line with people's back doors, depending how loose they are. But in a situation like this, where it's a lot more physical, of course, life-threatening, depending how passionate people are and how bad some may want it, whether they're all a part of it or they're just there following someone else, they might all get a piece of Noah in terms of attacking, possibly. One in a line, queue up, probably not. All at once, jumping on in, there's a chance. I'm giving different examples here and there, both pure real life and even scripted moments. Think of wrestling, WWE. You might get a tag team situation. Person tags the other one in, get into the ring, both are in the ring, only one should be present with the opponent. And then they both start beating down, kicking and punching that person near the turnbuckle repeatedly, both at the same time. Multiple injuries, not literal, but in a real life situation, based off that method of two at the same time kicking one person, multiple possible injuries. To what extent? Almost at the same time. The level of urgency as well. Get as much damage in as soon as possible. As much damage can be doubled by the increased amount of people present inflicting damage too. One individual could stamp and kick. How long would that take them? But 5 people doing it all at once can speed up the process. If on the basis that there was a killing in the Noah Presgrove case, would it have been slow? Would it have been fast? Would there have been a level of thought behind it? I'm going to do it slow. I'm going to drag things out, or I'm going to get it done as soon as possible. Normally, in terms of an accident, it tends to be instant. Because the longer it drags on for, the less of an accident it is. It's like if you were playing a game of roulette with a gun and it's supposedly not loaded, you could go 6, 7 rounds back and forth and you're all safe. It depends how many bullets you've got in the chamber. I know I'm not an expert with guns, okay? We, the people, might be, but I'm not. So just taking that in consideration. But let's say you're playing a game of Russian roulette with a friend or two. You keep spinning it around. Oh, safe, safe, safe. The longer it goes on for, what does that really mean? Until the point where a person then decides to pull the trigger, and on that turn, there was a bullet within. Is that an exception where it could be an accident? It wasn't exactly anticipated. Yeah, maybe I've mentioned an awkward example there of everyone thought it wasn't loaded the gun, but when the time came, it was. And that recklessness ended up costing someone's life. More so, A better example to do with a firearm. I know these examples don't link to the cause of death of Noah Presgrove or the injuries sustained, but I'm just giving examples on the spot from my memory, okay? A person could get shot, arm, leg, stomach, wherever, even in the eye, and it can be an accident. There can be many accidental gun incidents and injuries over time at a gun range, at home, in a garden, wherever, public space, depending what country you're in, of course, and if you're allowed to have firearms, take that into consideration. If you're allowed to have them, you follow all the guidelines, you do nothing wrong, but an accidental discharge, or you thought it was empty, but there was still one in the chamber and it fired, or there was a misfire, or you accidentally pulled the trigger and it was pointing towards someone, can be an accident. You know, there's really mainly two ways when it comes to self-inflicted. If you somehow shoot yourself, it could be deemed as an accident. And if not an accident, then likely intent. And if it's done with intent, possible chance of suicide, right? The only blurred line in between all that would be a person could shoot themselves not to commit suicide, but to cause enough injury to go to hospital for another reason. Like, not that they would be accessible in a prison, but other means of injury, strangulation or some kind of beating, or beating your head against a wall, or punching a wall to break your knuckles or hand. If you were in prison or jail and you were in danger, you wanted to get out, but you couldn't escape, and no, you were not going to be released anytime soon, but you had to get out, but you didn't want to end one's life. You'd cause some kind of injury to yourself or get someone else cause injury to yourself. So then you're taken away to a hospital and then you're away from the original threat, right? So when referring it back to self-inflicted or accidental, it goes one of three ways, but normally one of two ways. Though when it's aimed towards another individual who's on the receiving end of it, wrong place, wrong time, could be considered an accident. Is stabbing somebody an accident? Yes, it could happen. You could be walking with a knife, walking too fast, you're holding it the wrong way, and you suddenly make a sharp turn in a kitchen. It would need to be in a setting, an environment where using a knife would be appropriate and acceptable. So cooking situation, you're in a rush, pull the knife out, or you grab it off the side, you turn around too quick, holding it the wrong way, and someone's too close nearby, and oops, you've gone right into them. It might not happen that much, but it has definitely happened in life at some point. Not done with intent. Now, on the basis that you grabbed the knife, you turned around, accidentally walked into someone with it, and it penetrated, and then you pulled it out, or they pulled away, and it came out, yeah, accident. At what point does it not become an accident? If it happened again shortly afterwards. Because it's hard to believe you could accidentally stab someone twice within a few seconds, if not many more times. Just like if you had a firearm, there was like one bullet or so, or maybe a couple, and it discharged itself, or you thought you had the safety thing on, but it wasn't on safety, and you pressed the trigger, boom, they've been shot. A delay, and then boom, shot again. That's unlikely to be an accident. The only exception of an accident there would be if you had a fully automatic rifle, or the exception of a fully automatic Glock or something, and there was multiple bullets in the magazine, or the clip, whatever you want to call it, one in the chamber as well, and it was on full auto, and somehow it malfunctioned and started firing. I mean, I think I've seen something like that before. Or you accidentally pulled the trigger, you didn't mean to, and you held onto it for a bit too long. Only a few seconds is all it takes, and because of the fire rate, you think of a FAMAS, I think it's like 1,000, is it FPS or 1,000 whatever? Very fast firing. So in a couple of seconds, enough bullets have exited that gun and may have made contact with a person. And that person has got multiple gunshots, whether they're dead or alive. Those exceptions could be accidental. But if you had a firearm, semi-automatic, for example, and you shot someone accidentally, or it fired itself, malfunctioned, they got shot. 2-3 seconds later, there's a fair delay, isn't there? Oh, the shot again. 5 seconds later, the shot again. Come on, it's getting ridiculous now. I don't think it's an accident. I'm trying to give different examples, possibilities to that. So when applying it to Noah Presgrove, It's not the usage of a knife. It's not a usage of a gun. If there was a usage of a gun in terms of what it's primarily for, actually firing, one shot should be more than enough. If it's in a certain area which isn't fatal, but there are multiple shots after that point, then probably it is done with intent to try and finish the person off. Granted, there's been talk about a firearm being used, but the stock of the rifle, whatever type of gun that is, an AR or a shotgun or a hunting rifle, whichever one, some people said, oh, the one that Isaac had, possibly. Just possibilities, nothing for definite. But the shaping of the rifle stock, the butt of it, have a shape of a fish or so, the way it's like curved and oval. But what looks more likely, a golf club or the butt of a rifle stock to cause an injury such as to the head, which tore off, ripped off? The thing is, for something to rip off would mean the hair probably would have had to have been tugged, and that's what's called it to be ripped back. Noah did have a fair set of hair, maybe a bit curly. So an object making contact with it, catching it, and then pulling it back to rip it off, maybe. So that would have been a form of contact made, boom, like that. A simple bash like that doesn't rip off. It requires, do you like when you've got a hammer and you've got a plank? And no, I'm not talking about anyone watching this video, but if you've got a plank on the ground, you've got a hammer and you use the claw of it and you do like whack, you make contact first, boom, hook it, and then lever it back and rip it off, or even with a nail. It's like a two-step method. Either you do it with force, first of all, to get in position, to lock it in, or you just simply gently place it in, hook it under, boom. That's step one. Step two is to then pull it back. Could you do it in one whole motion? So if you had it back and you just like pulled it back like that, not quite. You got to get in, lever it slightly, and then pull, like a mechanism, like a lift situation. A lift, multiple things going on. One happens, then the other, then the other. Like a step to it. You press a button, the doors close, and then whatever internally starts moving. It's gears, cogs, I don't know, but one thing after the other. Is that how it applies with Noah Presgrove? There's a step to it. One form of impact followed by the other, or all at once. I don't think it is all at once, personally, in my opinion. So referring back to tools, more so in the Noah Presgrove situation, a possible golf club, is it a 9 iron or some kind of iron, a shape of a particular golf club, which is the same shape as a possible injury sustained to Noah's head. I think it's the scalp situation. Would a golf club cause that specifically? I mean, it might fit the shape of it, but does the shape of a club warrant the shape of the likes of a hammer with a claw on it? Because normally when something that is fixed down and quite solid, you know, the skin, the head, is fixed down, isn't it? The whatever you call it is fixed, just like a plank on the ground. To unearth it, just like with the ground and soil, means you got to dig in and then rip out or pull out. Okay? If you don't pull out, it's probably because you didn't put it in the first place. Hopefully people don't take that out of context in this case. But like a plank of wood, if it's nailed down, it's not just suddenly going to levitate. There's a bit of force behind it. Even if you whack it like that, it might not do much. I mean, it could break, it could shatter, but it's not exactly torn off. If you got a bandage, or as Americans say, you got a band-aid, you got a plaster, and it's on you, what happens to it? It could fall off with time. It might lose its stickiness. But if it's firm in place, like someone's head and scalp, it's not going anywhere anytime soon. In order for it to come off but still be somewhat attached would mean it's hanging off, like the scalp, if I'm correct in saying, which would mean some kind of force applied to dig in, to catch it, the lip underneath the plaster, to then pull it back like how you would with a can. Still attached by a bit, but it's hanging off and now it's left exposed. You got a wooden board. You want it to be pried off, but not completely. Get the hammer under, get the claw, hook it, and then rip it, pull it back, lever it up. You can take it off completely, clean, or you can only take so much off, so then it's flopping about dangling. The case with Noah Presgrove, the scalp is ripped, torn off backwards. That could imply the possible direction and the angling of maybe where contact was made with an item. I mean, when studying history in the past, even if it was a bit politically correct with certain things, because we had to learn about a bit of US history, which I don't get why when being in the bloody UK, but it is why it was at the time. But they said during a protester had their scalp also ripped off completely or part of it because a heavy pressured or intense pressure water cannon was used, and they were in that line of fire, or water you should say, and that intense pressure of water making contact with the head somehow caused the scalp to rip off backwards. I guess that concentrated force in a particular area can push stuff back, maybe. Just like the force and momentum of an item being wedged in and then that force pulling it back, that motion. If Noah's scalp was ripped off from front to back, it would mean the impact main would have had to have been somewhere here towards the front or just on top, in or caught, and then the item or object yanked back, which caught with the hair, a certain portion of it, and then that unearthed the scalp as well to be ripped off partially or mostly. You get where I'm coming from there. That can be a form of a two-step method or more. Contact is made to the head, where it's embedded, lodged, or caught up within hair. Then the act of yanking it away to cause that catch, to cause that traction, to cause that rip tear, and the force, the impact, the speed of it can determine the injury sustained. How accidental would that be, right? In terms of broken bones can be done accidentally by oneself having a fall, landing funny, or another person being present, like in a sport, football, American football, soccer, where you might go for a tackle, but you might land funny, or you may make contact with the person, which then causes them to twist, and it could lead to a snap, a break, torn ACL, whatever. It doesn't have to be a bone. It wasn't done with intent. It's just that with that physicality and that closeness between one person, well, two people, if not more, end up causing an injury. Yeah, it might not be exactly life-threatening, might not be at the end of the world, but still, somewhat of a serious injury that can put you out was done by accident. You get those people who might have gone blind because of some impact in the eye, a stone chipping, a rock being flicked by a car driving by it, flicked up and got them in the eye, blinded like that. Or a person being pushed as like a prank into a birthday cake. Certain accidental injuries sustained, or even through a prank gone wrong, like with the birthday cake situation, it's all in such an instant, like within seconds it happens, and then seconds later that regret, right? A broken bone situation, if it's in a matter of seconds, or a birthday cake being ploughed into it and a candle just missing your eye, okay, that tackle wasn't fatal. That tackle didn't actually break a bone or tear any muscles. That candle missed contact with your eye. Oh, you're safe. And then what? A few seconds later, it happens again. Another tackle or another moment of being pressed into the cake. It's almost like there's an intent then for the other person or people in wanting you to make contact with this, in wanting themselves to make contact with you. The first time round, an accidental kick, accidental contact made, an accidental low blow in boxing. But if it happens again shortly afterwards, after a small delay, it's as if you want it to happen. Like you're making it happen. It didn't happen the first time round and you're disappointed. So let's try again. It's like with, once again, it's dark, but village mob mentality. You're getting revenge on a thief or something and breaking their finger or arm with intent to teach them a lesson. They might get a plank of wood. Bang, bash. Didn't quite break. Oh, we'll do it again. Boom, broke. Not good enough. Let's do it one more time. Boom, completely messed up. How many more times does it take? Because the more times it takes, the more likely there is a level of intent behind it. And there's more likely intent behind it in that moment, planned or not, it's less likely to be an accident. And the more intent, the more likely it is, the more attempts that are made to cause some kind of damage, which appears less of an accident and more done with intent, the longer it goes on for, possibly the slower the death, and the more likely that all injuries weren't sustained in one go, and they all weren't done in one go, then there was a level of, oh, I'll take my time, or, you know, maybe I get other people involved to help as well, and we just drag it out, or what? There's a level of lack of emotion, or a certain emotion which is driving them to continue on in attempting to possibly cause some kind of damage since it didn't work the first time round. And then with that attempt after attempt after attempt, more likely to be different types of injuries sustained, from minor to major, to the point of where it could appear as overkill. Whew, I think I managed to get there in the end. But would a golf club really cause the scalp to tear off? I mean, there was one time where I had like, way back in the past, a toy car, but the back wheels were really stiff because it was like you had to wind it up and drag it along forwards. Similar to how with some cars you drag it back, let go, and then it speeds up by itself. Well, this was more, you push it forwards, really stiff, like a gear, stiff gear, and then it starts making noises like a car would. But the more you do it and the faster you do it, the more it speeds up. But when trying to slow it down with that momentum, it's a lot harder to do. And it just so happened that when I had it near to me, I don't know what side I had it on. Maybe it's that side, because I do look like I'm from Make-the-Wish Foundation when you look at the way the hair is. But there's no bell in sight to ring. But nevertheless, whether I'm there or not, I think I might have had the vehicle on this side too close to me. And what ended up happening, the hair got caught in the wheel, and because it was like a gear and it took a certain amount of time for the momentum, the vehicle's wheels to stop, it just kept going round and round and round until it got so far and it couldn't go anymore, so it just literally tugged it. How much did it pull out? I can't remember, but I'm sure you can apply that on a bigger scale, as in, if there was a form of momentum and something catches on your body with another item, and then that item causes whatever that's attached to be pulled away with a level of force, whatever that is attached, which is attached to something underneath it, like levels of skin, scalp, could be pulled away with it as well. If it's a few little loose hairs, yeah, the few hairs could be ripped out and that's it. Just like if you had a hair on your arm and you just tugged it, or if you had a tweezer on an eyebrow hair and you pulled it out like that. Okay, can I do a demonstration? Yeah, there you go. Can you see that? That there. It came out easily. No, I'm not on chemotherapy or anything like that, in case anyone tried insulting me. It's just a loose hair, right? Some hair can be looser than others on different parts of the body, right? But something like the hair, which normally doesn't fall out that easily, unless there's some, obviously, you know, serious issues going on, with the exception of that, put that aside, the hair should be quite firm and strong and somewhat healthy, that if you was to tug, nothing would happen besides the odd loose hair. For the hair or a clump to come out, it would require probably more grip and more force to pull. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to mess up my hair, but even a small amount, a small clump, maybe you could pull it out, it might be noticeable, probably would hurt. But in terms of a bigger surface area, in terms of the scalp itself, which I'm guessing is underneath, you know, the hair and the follicles, it's like you make contact with the hair, you pull that first, and then as the hair pulls away, the hair is grasping onto the skin, the scalp, and then that causes that to pull away. It's like a chain reaction. It's like if you had shopping carts or trolleys, depending on whatever bloody language you use, whichever country you're from, at a shop, at a supermarket, as a mall, whatever you call it. And let's say all the carts are in line, but they're all chained with one another. You pull one out so you can go around the shop. Well, if they're all chained, as soon as you pull that first one, if you pull it with enough force outwards, well, there's still that one what you've pulled out is attached to all the others. So as you pull the first one, the others pull themselves and come along with you. Does that make sense? So like with the hair situation, if somehow it got twisted or tangled, even like a whisk, but in a more serious scenario and state, somehow got caught, wedged, hooked, and then pulled back over to cause that ripping and tear off, like if you had paper and tore it in half, tore it back, tore it apart like that, depending on the rip and the angle of it. It depends the force, the speed, and how much of it is really caught up. If it's just a small bit of clump of hair, yeah, it'll probably rip out, but it won't cause the scalp to come off as well. But I guess the bigger the clump of hair and the lower down it is on it, making contact with the hair, straight down to the bottom of the hair follicle, you know, the lower down it is, and a big portion of it, and the more hair you have, you yank it off. Oh, it really will, won't it? You know, if someone had a ponytail and you grabbed that ponytail by the shaft, I know there was some viewers that wanted me to use that word. If you grab it by the shaft and you yank it hard enough, regardless of what position you're in, with enough force, that could cause it to rip off. But realistically, with a human hand and a tug like that, it's not really going to go anywhere. It would probably require quite a bit of force, wouldn't it, really? You'd probably need some kind of clamp and mechanical device to clamp it and then, almost like a pulley, pull it off, and that's pretty brutal, but it can happen, but maybe not by hand, by a person. A tool would need to be used. Is that why a tool could have been used directly or indirectly to cause that to know? Was it done with intent, specifically that injury? Maybe not. The possible act of just killing Noah or getting revenge or teaching him a lesson is the overall thing. But as for the aim, the method of the injury sustained wasn't quite planned out. It was just whack him, punch him, do whatever in that moment in time, heat of the moment or not, on the basis of it possibly being a beating with the usage of blunt items. Blunt instruments can cause blunt trauma to the body within, and that's basically what Noah experienced, supposedly internally decapitated within. Not a compound fracture though, where the bone's popping out. Okay? I don't know why, but in today's video, have I suddenly transformed into some kind of medical expert? Probably not. But I'm just basing it off from everything that I've known, that I've seen as for injury sustained, how it can look, how it can appear. As dark as footage is out there, it can have its appliances, and I can apply it here with experience. I don't have to have all the injuries myself. You can see it from someone else's point of view and apply it here. A golf club. Is it shaped like a hammer? Not really, but the curve of it could resemble kind of the curve of the claw of a hammer. But it depends what you can wedge underneath. If you've got the scalp there, there's no overhang, there's no lip to hook something in and then pry it backwards like how you would with a plank. A plank could have like a little gap, which then you put the claw in. How do you do it? I'll have to do it sideways. So let's say there was a gap there. I'm not doing some kind of signal in case anyone's wondering. You had a gap there, you had the hammer, you put it through the hole, and it's, you know, it's hooked under. Oh yeah, I can't twist my hands around. It's like hooked under. So when you pull it out, it's going to pull the thumb off as well. In terms of the head, like domed shape, there's no like overhang, there's no lip, there's no gap to hook something in and then pull it back. Unless you had like really deep creases in your forehead, but even that wouldn't be enough. You would need some kind of platform to hook it under and then pry back, which then could cause things to rip off in that instant with a certain weapon. The only other way would be, and it can apply with like wood and certain items, and even possibly ice, where like a pickaxe, you smash it in first to make contact, it penetrates in, and then you pull it back out. Not the best example, you get what I'm saying. A hammer can do that as well, as bad as it is with the claw. The shape of the claw of the hammer. Is it sharp? Not really, but it has got a smaller surface area. I'm just being honest. And you went like that into someone, it probably would get lodged in. And then, you know, you're trying to move it out, oh, I can't, and then you try and pry it out. Think of a zombie apocalypse. Think of the Walking Dead. They might use a blunt instrument, or to an extent a blunt instrument, whack a zombie, but then they're trying to pull it out and it's stuck. You got to try and pry it out. Could that have happened with Noah's head? An item was used to cause an indentation or a puncture and then pulled back, which caught the scalp literally to rip off. Does anyone think that's possible? There could well be many other examples and causes of injuries like that, and the broken bone situation, which I've not included in today's video, okay? But I can't think of everything on the spot. But now that I do say it, I do remember how when I was talking about the golf club situation in the first place, depending how it was used could determine which way Noah was facing, face down. If more of the serious injuries were caused, like the neck area, top, back of the head, that place, probably face down. But for broken ribs, at some point probably was face up or stood up and then hit. Could have been rolling about, depending. Front, back, okay. The front and back, can it be caused at the same time? Maybe certain injuries, possibly. In this case, I'm not too sure. I'd lean more towards, on the basis of a beating, could have been beaten so many times on the front, then was forced to roll over, or the person decided to roll over to protect certain body parts, which then left other parts exposed. Like when I talked about the fighting, boxing situation, you can protect yourself, but you can't protect all of your body all at once, unless you had additional items, like a riot shield, a stab-proof vest, braces, whatever you call it, right? So there is that. In terms of what I saw on the autopsy report, I don't remember seeing it, but then when I questioned it in a video, people supposedly confirmed it. So besides the teeth situation, broken, some missing, loose, some lodged in the mouth or gum, but the jaw supposedly was broken or damaged. Well, if teeth are broken or cracked, that could be caused by a bit of a blunt instrument being whacked against the side. The jaw's damaged as well, which I didn't quite see myself, but if that is truly the case, been whacked in the side with a club, possibly. Certain injuries can cause multiple different injuries, of course, but like a knife, that tends to cause like a laceration, a cut, or a puncture. A knife doesn't cause broken bones, right? A gunshot. Does a gunshot cause broken bones? Not exactly, but a bullet could pass through the body, ricochet, or directly go through a bone, which causes it to fragment. Is that the correct way of it? It's not like a standard broken bone type scenario, but it's definitely caused bone breakage, or it causes it to fragment. I don't know the correct term, but yeah. And you could have an entry-exit wound or some kind of ricocheting in the body, and then it comes out elsewhere and it looks a bit weird, the angling of it all. But, you know, a bullet hole is different to a stab wound. And I guess if you're somewhat of an expert or you've got a bit of experience, you can tell the difference between the two. And maybe general public could as well if they're familiar with items and what they can do, right? But a blunt instrument, not only can it cause blunt trauma impact within and internal bleeding, the friction of a blunt instrument can still cause a possible cut or some kind of laceration. Think of an elbow, right? You think of UFC fighting and they do an elbow strike. That's not sharp, is it? That's not a knife. It's not a gun. It's a blunt, fairly surface area impact made maybe with someone's eyebrow or forehead, but that impact and that rubbing causes it to tear, to split open, and some can split quite wide. It might not be deep, but it's enough to cause an opening, right? you got to take that into consideration. The blunt instruments and items can be more deadly in other ways, but also more versatile. They can cause some possible cuts. They can cause some kind of abrasions depending on the angling of it. And it can also cause breakages of bones and even compound fractures. And it can also cause internal bleeding as well on the skull. And because it's seen as like some kind of blunt trauma or blunt force by a car, well, that's an object which isn't sharp, so yeah. But it just so happens that was ruled out. Hit and run, any usage of vehicle for the most part of it, or at least just a hit and run, ruled out. Could a person have just been hit and they didn't run? Well, if they didn't run, it would have been reported in sooner, much earlier. And that wasn't the case, so just hit and then run, but that's ruled out. Can something be deemed as a hit and run if you're driving along and a person falls out of a vehicle? You realise that, or you realise afterwards, they're not in the passenger seat anymore. Oh well, and keeps on driving. Would that be considered hit and run, or would it be considered manslaughter? You're not exactly hitting the person, they're just falling out of a moving vehicle. Is it their own fault? Who's at blame there? If anyone can answer it down below, that would be appreciated. And we saw from that supposed medical expert that Noah fell out, possibly with a moving vehicle. Jack even hinted at it as well. Okay, and that's what caused all the injuries. Would it have caused all those injuries? I don't think so, personally. Before I heard about the autopsy, I was suggesting maybe dumped out of a moving vehicle, hitting the ground or making contact with a signpost nearby, wrapped up around that, breakages, and then rolling across the ground. Yeah, but not enough injury sustained to the lower part. Shoes still remaining. Chain broken. Would a chain break in the act of just being hit by a vehicle? Not really. You could possibly say the chain breaking, which was around Noah's neck, does that have any correlation to like the scalp ripping? It's fixed on. A chain can be loose, but still it can be a bit awkward to get off or get on. Some people, like females with all the hair, they'll have it attached on by themselves or someone else and then tie it, boom, like that. And if they want it off, they're not going to try and take it off like a t-shirt. They're going to unclip it or get someone else to do so. And then like that. So it can still be loose, it can dangle, but it's probably not going to fall off you because the ears are going to hold it down, especially if you got hair as well. And with Noah, he did a fair bit of hair on him, so that probably would have kept the chain from falling off for most part of it. For it to be broken up would imply that it's been snatched. Now, if you were stealing jewelry and you were snatching someone's necklace, yeah, it could break, it could tear. It could break into pieces if it's a beaded necklace or a diamond one. But you normally snatch it because you want it. But Noah's necklace was found like by his body. The full necklace or part of it, kind of unknown. But if it wasn't the full part and there's a missing part, where is it and why was it snatched? Why was it taken off? But you get the idea of a necklace. If it's going to be broken into pieces, possibly, if you put your hand around the necklace and you yank it off, it could break into different pieces compared to if you just simply unpin, unclip it from the back where it just separates as it should. If you yank it, break it in different places. A form of getting your hand in it, grasping it, and then pulling. It's like a two-step method, just like prying a floorboard with a crowbar or a hammer. That claw hooks it in place and then you pull it or you lever it up. The scalp, something catching, penetrating, then being pulled back, or something somehow catching in the hair and enough of it to then pull it away, which causes the hair to pull away, and then the hair pulls away from the scalp and the scalp pulls away from the head, the skull area. A chain reaction. No pun intended there. Interesting, this. Now, am I saying that everything that I've said today is 100% correct? No. These are just my thoughts, my analysis, exactly what people wanted, and you're getting it now. Now, to be honest with you, I probably said that this video was going to be an earlier one and there'll be a live premiere afterwards, but depending on the length of this video, this could be the live premiere. I wasn't quite sure how long this discussion would go on for, okay? So, Based off all the ins and outs and what's been assessed and analysed today, and the key theme of overkill and maybe multiple attempts and the time it took, not the time of Noah's death, but the time it took from the first beating or possible impact made at least by something or someone to the final blow. That time difference may never know, or up to a point may not know, but that's worth considering. It does feel like a form of foul play. Now, there is some people out there that say the body was dumped there. But in terms of the killing or the possible killing, that occurred elsewhere. Do I agree with that? Just based on the theme of missing blood, I would say so. Medical or certain experts have said it's odd as well. But not all experts agree with one another, because supposedly an unverified expert on Reddit said that, oh yeah, not enough blood on the ground, so that must mean it's missing. No, it's because it's absorbed within the body. Can that happen? I'm no expert there. Is it truly possible to lose so much blood, but for so much blood not to be present at the scene of where you've been killed because that blood was reabsorbed or something into the body? I wonder. What I find odd is that there was like a pool or a patch of blood nearby, but there was a bit of distance between the body and the little patch of blood. How does that patch of blood get there and Noah's body is back here? And there was no splatter in between. There's no dripping, there's no pool, there's no trail of blood, whether that be the gradient of the road, if it's like this, like that, or still. It's like the person is killed on the spot and then they bleed out. Blood could trickle in a certain direction depending on the gradient, or it could collect where there's an indentation into the ground and it feels like a pool. And even once it has filled like a pool, the source of where it came from, there's a trail of it. You think of a puddle of water, whether that be caused by a dip in the ground and it's flooded. Once it starts overflowing, it may go in a certain direction or trail. Or if you were stood in one spot and you poured water onto the ground, it may trickle wherever and then collect elsewhere. But you'll be able to follow it and trace it all the way down to where it's collected, because the previous part, the source, there's a trail, there's a track. There wasn't a trail or a track at Noah's body. It's just like body placed here and a bit of blood placed there. And no splatters in between. Seems a bit too clean based off the injuries sustained. Doesn't quite make sense. So if it did happen elsewhere, well then it would, even just that itself would imply a form of foul play and likely some kind of murder or killing situation, right? Moving from point A to point B, how much does it benefit those responsible? Simply moving it away from the scene to avoid questions, reduce it a bit. If the initial killing possibly occurred on site of a property, could be some serious repercussions there and some serious follow-ups and questioning, possibly, if the police could be bothered to as well. But if you used to move the body further afar elsewhere, maybe there's less questioning, or there's a time frame and period where there's less focus on the original place where the person was from. I mean, you can say as a counterpoint, by moving the body actually creates more questions and answers and more suspicion and more intrigue to the less known place he was seen. And with that interest and that intensity forming, there's a need and there's a want to actually go there and search. But did that apply to the police? Not from the looks of it. Now, if Noah's body was found on property on site and still deemed as not a hit and run and a mysterious cause of death, would the police think, right, the body is on site of this property, we need to search the property? Would they do it then, when it's staring at them right in their eyes? Or would they still be open and say, you know what, the body's on site of this property, there's a house literally nearby, a few centimetres away, but we're just not going to do a search warrant, there's no need to? Would that really be the case? Or would they actually search? Because if they were to actually search, then you can understand why whoever, whatever, on the basis of a possible beating and on the basis that it could have possibly been on property or nearby, it made sense to move the body away. Would it have made more sense to just bury the body outright and dispose of it that way, like the Dylan Rounds case? No, because with that comes more questioning, possible more resources, and an intensity. Sometimes, not always, a missing person case, more resources can be used there than a simple flat-out murder true crime case. You might wonder, why is that? Because there are certain resources and items that you use in a missing person case which you won't use in a murder case or where a body has been found because it's outright there. It's like the usage of possibly cadaver dogs and certain specialised groups and teams and volunteers. They will be called in and used specifically when trying to search for a missing person, the scent of the individual. They might be looking for additional evidence, clues as well in a particular direction. The usage of using a full spectral drone which measures and analyses soil disturbance. You're going to be checking for soil disturbance in a true crime case? Maybe not initially. There might be some exceptions along the way where future resources or equipment is brought in to be used in a location or place because there's new leads or there's a missing item or there's missing evidence, and by searching around post finding the body, let's get more to get a hold of evidence to fill out the case more, for clarity, for justice, for whatever. But the initial stage of when it begins, missing person cases, more resources used. And you could say, not exactly. Oh, but there is. Because I'm not just simply talking about a simple missing person case. You can have missing person cases mysteries, then you can have missing person cases mysteries in which eventually the body or a bone could be found, confirming the identity of the missing person, but they're obviously dead. And then that opens up the investigation possibility to whatever next. And if there's evidence along the way at a point to suggest foul play, murder, homicide, then it becomes true crime. The Dylan Rounds case, for most part of it, online was treated as a true crime case from the beginning. But in terms of in real life, it was within the first day or two of the radio silence of Dylan Rounds, treated as a missing person case. And it was for quite some time. And even if there was evidence early on in the first week or so to suggest foul play, the family was still hopeful that he was simply missing. Even the police didn't take it that serious in the first week and just said, oh, he'll probably be back from a friend's place. He'll come back eventually. Didn't happen because he was already dead. Okay? On the 30th of May 2022, Candice Cooley reported Dylan Rounds as a missing person. A public database on NamUs was created of Dylan Rounds, missing person, last seen, includes date, last heard, includes date, and some additional details as well. It was a missing person case officially from the beginning, which then transpired into a true crime murder case, right? The Noah Presgrove case, in the eyes of David Paulides, would imply, well, it's the same thing. Noah was a missing individual. And some of the partygoers have said it too, supposedly. But Noah Presgrove was never officially a missing person. There was never an official missing person report made of Noah's name. Only a report much later on, delayed than expected, of Noah's body being found, hence the death of Noah. But no one reporting Noah as missing. No missing person posters. No missing person database profile. None of that. Could it have been issued? Yeah, could have been. But considering where Noah's body was found at, it's not exactly a needle in a haystack. He would have been found eventually at some point. But no one was proactive enough or worried enough to report him truly as missing, even if they claimed that he was missing and they didn't know where he was. But, oh well, we're not going to follow it up any further. That really sums up the mentality there. You truly think someone's missing, you'll obviously take action. Give or take a few hours maybe, but it just depends the situation, right? Take in consideration early hours of the morning, it's dark, Noah's drunk, wants to get back home, and the only way to get back home is via a vehicle. No one's giving him a lift. How else do you think he's going to get back, right? Oh, is he silly enough to try it himself and walk back? People can nod their heads and say, nope, wouldn't have happened. But if he was desperate enough, he could have tried. And the fact that he supposedly wasn't seen by anyone after that. Ooh, what do we do? What do we do? Let's just carry on partying, or let's just go to sleep, or let's just move on. Oh well. Yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It's like going so far in, but not all in. Oh, there's a person missing. Oh, there's a terrorist over there with wires hanging out his coat. I could treat it as a terrorist attack. I could treat it as a missing person case. I could call it in officially and make an official call, and it could be noted down officially and witnessed. But now, not enough room for concern. No, never mind. Right? To refer back to resources, okay? I don't think any cadaver dogs or full spectral drones were used in this case with Noah Presgrove. I can't, and was the area or ground nearby searched, dug up, or ponds? I don't think so either. But likely that would have happened if there was no sign or trace of Noah. You'd be trying to trace it back to the source. Where was he last seen? Where was he last heard of? Which direction was he going in? It might have yielded more answers. As Jack said, oh, I saw Noah go off into the dark, just like that. Which way? Did he go east towards the highway? Did he go west towards the woodland area, which then goes down to the, I think, Red River or so, or the Texas border? Both ways are hazardous conditions, you know, depending which way you're facing, direction-wise. If you used to go east, you're going towards the highway, walking, you could get hit by a vehicle, possibly. I know it's been ruled out here, but in general, it can happen. Walking on a highway, not a good idea. And then really the only other way is, because you think of it fenced off in the dirt road, going down like in a linear fashion, okay, you go west towards that final building, and then what? Beyond, that's the woodland, and then beyond, there's a river. Could drown. Not exactly good conditions to be in. And with it being dark, and possibly being alone, where's your help? So you take in mind the conditions, you take in mind the environment, you take in time the timing, you take in mind the condition of the person themselves, and you take in mind their state of mind, and you take in mind if they have tried getting away earlier, there'd be room for concern. But there wasn't enough concern to report him missing, so it was never a missing person case, as David Polides was trying to claim. Okay? So because of that, limited resources used. And you take in mind maybe the mentality of certain resources or people lacking, not proactive, lacking in additional equipment or investigation and areas to be looked at. But if on the basis Noah Presgrove was a missing person, you think of all the other additional resources which would be used, and past a certain time and point where it's like, you know, it's getting hard now to believe he could still be alive, we might have to start searching the vast area, the rural landscape, the woodlands, the ponds, check just in case he's fallen into one, in case something's happened. Would it be as bad as a needle in a haystack like with the Dylan Rounds case? There's actually a fair chance, yes, especially if the cameras weren't working, as it's been claimed. And if people kept tight-lipped in the background as well, and if Jack didn't explain in terms of what direction Noah walked in, who would actually find him? I think it would be like a Dylan Rounds case, and it would go on a lot longer. But there'd be a lot more effort and resources used in some way. Even if it was the general public, even if it was the family doing a grid search, a public search of the area, hand in hand, looking about, looking for a disturbance, looking for clues and evidence along the way. None of that's obviously needed here, because the body was found in plain open sight. Right? So all I'm getting at is, in a missing person case, which then transfers into supposedly a true crime case, a lot more resources are used, and it's a lot more intense. Might not always be successful, but there's a lot more going on, and the Dylan Rounds case proved it. In this situation, it's just a possible true crime case. And I say possible true crime because it's not officially treated as a crime. It's just like a mysterious outcome. Almost like how it's treated as the mysterious outcome of that 7-year-old girl that somehow fell into the water, never to be really cleared up or explained. Well, that's useful. Not? I guess in that case, the cause of death was by a propeller, but the mystery of falling in wasn't solved. So that's a bit problematic. But to refer back to the placement of the body and the lack of blood, but the odd patch nearby and no splatter in between, and the possibility of it happened elsewhere but closer to home to some, It would lead to more questioning. Let's move that away, reduce the heat level, let's drop him off there. But let's not bury the person, because if we did, it would lead to a more intensive, long-term investigation, and it could surround us for a long time in our area. We want to just move on quick, like it never happened. And the best way to get it over and done with is not to hide it, but just to move the body away, so it can be found quick enough, it can be reported in quick enough, and hopefully concluded quick enough, on the basis that by blind luck and chance that they're incompetent enough that they may just agree and say, oh well, hit and run, it happens, and case closed. Is that the same with the Jay Slater case? Or instead of disposing him, we'll just push him off a cliff, possibly, not confirmed, but let's push him off a cliff so he can be found possibly eventually. But because of the conditions, the state he was in as well, and the location of it all, could have been accidental. Dehydrated, that's what was proved, documented on that call by him, the final one. Dehydrated, disorientated, could have easily fell off a cliff. But then you had the counterpoints where people were saying, would you go through all these cactuses to just fall off a cliff? And the clothing wasn't on him, but by him. How does it come off? Not like a Noah Presgrove situation. I've not covered the Jay Slater case deep enough to understand it completely, but there's a crossover with clothing. Being nearby but not on would imply that there was some kind of additional movement. But if it was anything like Noah, no one would have gone into that deep ravine to then take clothes off Jay. It would have had to have been done before Jay fell off the cliff, because it's not accessible. The highway, though, in the Noah Presgrove case, it's easy to get to there and from. It's a straight, flat road. You can go there and back, and it won't take that long if you're going by car. So if you feel like you've disposed of someone or something, but you feel like, more could be done, there's unfinished business, you can go back there easily. No cameras, blind spot, get away with it. Certain time of the day, less traffic, but still some, could still get away with it, hence coming and going, moving forwards and back. So yeah, I think up to now, based off my reasoning and piecing it all together, it does come across as a form of foul play. And if there's foul play, then likely it's probably, just based off that, in that scenario, a high chance of being killed by someone or some people, based off the brutality, the overkill, the different types of injuries in different angles and perspectives and depths, front and back. You can be beaten all over, but not all at once exactly. Unless there's a group, a mob that are constantly kicking you, but you'd still, to get damage from behind, you'd have to be rolled over, then rolled over again in different areas. So yeah, that's my thoughts at this moment in time. Apologies if it got too long, but hopefully people were able to understand it. This is my opinion, what I think up to now. There can always be twists and turns along the way, which could suddenly turn everything upside down. Notice I didn't mention any names today, because the most important factor is trying to understand what happened to Noah specifically and why he was there. Besides who's responsible, that can be another discussion and topic. And I think the discussions and topic as to who could be responsible at this moment in time, it's maybe more finger pointing, and it's welcomed not in a positive way, but just naturally, because there's so many people involved in the case, it's easy to point fingers in different directions. And it's even easier to point blame towards those that act out, that may dig themselves into a hole and make themselves look suspicious. They're not doing themselves any favours, but they're doing the general public a favour in terms of picking someone to blame, or people. If you're innocent, you're innocent. It should be that straightforward, but it's not in this case. It's a bit messy. Am I going to say who's directly responsible? I'm not in a position to do so. I don't feel confident enough there. There's a time and there's a process, but the process and the understanding of the situation with the body, the state, the condition, the location, I'm getting a better idea, hence why I've done this video today. The one to blame, or the people, you can give ideas and suggestions, but at this moment in time when things are so tense and the way people are in the background, some are, it's not worth it at this moment, okay? Wording and language is everything, just like the video I did last night, but still, the odd person didn't comprehend that, and I think they're acting in a very inappropriate and unnecessary way. For more context of that, check my last video out, top right corner of the screen where the eye symbol is. You can catch up on it, but go to the comment section and you will find it. Find a negative comment and it will show. There's only one, really. So yeah, I think this might have transpired into a live premiere at the end of the day due to the length of this video, but hopefully you found it somewhat interesting. No laws, no issues, no drama today, so feel free to like and share this video to Facebook, to Reddit. This is a perspective of an individual who's not even from the US, not a medical examiner, not a lawyer, not a forensic, whatever you call it. I'm just a person, and that's it. But I am using common sense, and that can go a long way. And experience in terms of causes of death based off graphic material observed with time within the public domain, of course. So hopefully you get the idea. So there are comments, the comment section down below with one comment pinned by me. You want to check that out. You want to support this channel. That's welcome, and of course, definitely appreciated. Shout out to those that have supported the channel recently. Really positive to see. And the positive comments as well. You can leave your additional thoughts, questions, and anything like that in the comment section down below under this video. I believe this is one of the deepest videos that I've done so far, and it's without the use of any notes. Not a single note, not a single script was used. Granted, there was some jump cuts in today's video because there was some distractions, or I had to get a drink, had a bit of a tickle or irritation at the back of the throat, but besides that, it was all done mainly in one sitting, if you get me. So I appreciate your patience. I hope you managed to watch it through. If you joined late to this impromptu live premiere, be sure to rewind back to the start. And yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.